Joining me and Viv in the Johannesburg studio now is Richard Hurst. He's a senior analyst at Ovum. We're talking MTN. Everybody's talking about Nigeria, but Richard, you believe that we don't have the full Nigerian story. Bring us up to date.
I think, again, as Viv just before the break announced, chatting, was that the Nigerian economy has been hit severely this year, and of course it's the oil price which is coming to play, the currency fluctuations. But on the whole, if we look at those MTN numbers, it's quite a decent performance given the pockets of challenges that they've had across their various emerging markets. And I think it's demonstrating that they're able to show their mettle as an emerging markets network operator. Others are finding it slightly more difficult, but they're showing...
And I know Viv is going to jump in, but just a quick one on Nigeria. I mean, on the one hand, the fluctuation in the currency, the falling oil price, those are all macroeconomic things that are outside of MTN's control. But the issues with the regulators, surely this is now raising a real red flag, because they've been negotiating and they're not winning on that front.
Of course, there was the suspension of SIM cards for sale for a month, and you can see that just like in South Africa that we've had our MTRs, which has had quite a significant impact on voice revenues for all operators across the board, well, dominant players. I think that the likes of Nigeria, the regulatory environment is going to be ratcheted up a notch or two more intense over the next 12 months. And probably other regulators in Africa will start to follow suit as well.
I'm just going to be a bit more, macro than this. I know that, there's obviously the WhatsApp coming out with a voice service. There's a lot of voice-based, database voice services coming around. And if one looks at, for instance, the moves in, especially the metros to have, free Wi-Fi, I think that combination is incredibly dangerous to companies like, Vodacom and MTN. And what do you think that the moves that they're going to do to actually alleviate that danger is going to be like?
Well, we look at it and we say these network operators are between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, they have the regulators forcing the MTRs down. On the other hand, they have to keep putting capex into their network infrastructure. But then on the other side, we have these OTT over-the-top players eating into their revenues. So it's a bit of a balancing act that they need to approach in this. One is that either they can start squeezing out the OTT players and become OTT players themselves, or do they just become the pipe, the mirror, the plumbing for the water for everyone, and whatever the flavor of the water is, they don't care just as long as it's running over their infrastructure. So those two options, and the way I see MTN in its footprint across Africa, it will adopt more of a mixed approach with some lean operations and others more smart, shall we say.
What about, in a tough environment like South Africa, where, getting that competitive edge is essentially very, very difficult? They're talking about accelerating their deployment of capex in South Africa to try and get it. Is it going to work, in your view?
Well, it's very interesting because if we look at the subscriber additions over the year, they've actually done exceptionally well. And if we look at last year, this time, MTN was saying that they had been caught on the back foot in terms of the price war that Cell C had initiated. So now they've actually woken up, stuck to their guns or their knitting, which is telecoms, getting people on board. And now, if you look at it, they're at about, let's call it 28 million subscribers, Vodacom at 31 million subscribers. And if we look at their guidance, that they're going to add 2.5 million subscribers over the next year, it's becoming a real two-horse race. And with adding that capex of 10 billion, doubling their existing capex, which is significantly more than Vodacom. So is the war really on, and will it pay off?
Viv is going to take us home with the final question to you, but a quick one. There's been rumors of Cell C potentially being bought over. If that happens, how does that change the industry altogether?
Well, first off, I doubt that MTN would be able to acquire Cell C. It would have to go through all kinds of regulatory hurdles, and I can see that there would be a hue and cry that would not allow that. So probably it would be a different equity partner that would need to step in for that type of entity.
As I look at a question, there's been talk, of course, of telecom, the telecom towers especially. What's happening there with regards to MTN?
Well, you can see that it's a very smart move. in some instances, as we notice in Nigeria, that they've started to outsource all that passive network infrastructure. So it's very nice, so they can move all that off their balance sheet and onto their OPEX costs. So it's a one way for them to balance those network operating costs, becoming more lean, more efficient. But then it begs the question in South Africa, where we're doubling our CapEx, what are we going to be throwing that money into? Probably it's going to be fiber, it's going to be a massive play into data, be it fixed or mobile. There is that capability for MTN.
Talking us through the MTN numbers, that's Richard Hurst. A very big thank you to him. He is a senior analyst at